Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We're ready for the event.
Washington Post, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
Yeah, Station, this is the Washington Post. How do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
I'm delighted to be here with you today. I mean, I'm sort of a science geek. The Washington Post newsroom is buzzing with excitement. I want to ask you, and I'll direct this to you, Karen, first. You guys have been up there a couple of months. What's the biggest adjustment? I see you guys are floating in space.
Oh, gosh, the biggest adjustment, probably one of the things that you learn is that when you drop something, you obviously have to look all over. We've had problems with a couple things the last couple days, and, you know, on Earth, you drop something and you automatically look to the floor, and that's where it'll be. And oftentimes you drop something and you look all over the place, and it'll be right behind your head, and you look back this way and look back this way, and you don't see it, and you can look for quite a while before you find what you're looking for.
Have you lost a bunch of things, Chris?
Well, it depends how you define lost. I think lost means you never can find it ever again. If that's the case, no, I haven't lost anything. But it's very common that we lose something for a day or two or three, and then eventually we find it in the air conditioning return.
Yeah, so tell me this. What exactly are you guys doing in space? What sort of experiments are you doing? And how do they affect life here on Earth?
Well, that's a big, broad-reaching question, but on any given day, we're all three of us are usually working on some type of experiment, and sometimes they're as low impact to us as just setting up some equipment, and then the experiment runs itself. Oftentimes, we are the eyes and the hands of the subject matter expert, the principal investigator who's on the ground talking to us through the radio, and then there are other kinds of experiments that just run all by themselves without our interaction whatsoever. And there's many aspects of how they affect life on Earth, but I think our personal favorite is the use of ultrasound machines in remote locations. This is obviously a remote location, but the impact on Earth would be using ultrasound in place of an MRI in really rural locations or impoverished areas where it's hard to have a big MRI machine to get good quality medical care.
Wow, that is very, very related to what is happening here on Earth. Karen, I want to direct this to you. It seems like NASA's in trouble just in terms of funding, lots of debate here about the future of the space program. What do you think about the future of the space program? As a kid, I just, in class, they would wheel in the television and we'd see the space shuttle go up, and it was such a huge moment. That doesn't really happen now. What do you think about the future of space travel as an American priority?
Well, I think, like anything, there are ebbs and flows in a process, and I think we're seeing maybe an ebb right now in the space program. But I'm positive that, again, we'll see a flow. We've seen it in the past where there's been a decade or so where we feel as though we're not really doing anything and going anywhere. And but I think there are enough smart people in the country that will keep getting things going, and I have full confidence that we'll see a flow again soon.
So I want to ask you, I can direct this to Chris, is the big get now in terms of where we want to go, is it Mars? Should we be looking to Mars? You think that's going to be possible?
Well, it gets down to what people's personal opinions are, and if you ask me as an individual person, I think that it's exciting to go to another planet. Mars is an awful long ways away, and you really want to make sure everything that you have to keep you alive is robust and going to withstand all the harsh environments and the trip there and back. And they don't just, I'm a Navy guy, and you just don't take a ship out of the shipyard and send it off on a deployment. You have some cruises in the local area off the coast before and make sure everything works. And I think the moon is a wonderful place to do just that, make sure that all of the things that we're establishing the baseline for here on the International Space Station work potentially on the moon, and then the next step from there would be to Mars. Now, that's just my own personal opinion as an individual United States citizen, and the priorities of that have to do with budgets and fiscal things and where the country wants to go as a nation, and that's for our lawmakers to decide. But if it were me, that's my personal opinion.
Karen, I'm going to direct this to you. How do you keep in touch with folks back here at home? Or with the news? Or
well, we have an internet protocol. We have an internet protocol phone that we can call anytime we have KU-band antenna coverage, which isn't constant through the day, but there's quite a bit of it through the day. And so we can call family and friends on that. We also have our support, all the support folks on the ground set up family conferences with us once a week where we can have a video conference with our families and sometimes other groups of friends. And then also email is a good way to keep in touch with the people that we work with on the ground and our family and friends.
And what about social media? Chris, are you big on Twitter?
I can answer that for him. No.
So none of you guys aren't tweeting from space?
Luca and I are.
Okay, well, I'm going to make sure to.
I'm too much. Yeah, follow Luca and Karen. I'm too much of a knuckle dragger to know how to type 140 characters, so it's not for me.
Okay, well, maybe we'll convince you otherwise. Tweeting is where it's at. All the kids are tweeting.
Sorry, we didn't quite catch that.
Chris, what do you miss most about Earth?
Well, several things. Personally, I miss my family. That's an obvious answer. But you're probably interested in some other types of things. I miss, that it's summertime, and I enjoy walking through the neighborhood and smelling all fresh cut grass. That's one smell I miss. We had a colleague of ours just like 5 minutes ago send us a picture of homemade chocolate chip brownies, and I miss home-baked goods. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot of exciting things that I'm looking forward to getting back on Earth, but I'll be there soon, so it's not like I'm really longing for them. But those are a couple things right off the top of my head.
And Karen, what about you? What do you miss? Home?
Actually, a lot of the same things. I really miss running outside, actually. I love to run, and we have a treadmill here where we use a harness and use bungee cords to stay on the treadmill, and we can run, and it's great. But I really miss the aspect of being outside. That's one of my favorite things about running is going outside and when you're in different cities, exploring and just breathing the fresh air.
We talked a little bit about going to Mars. Karen, would you be up for going to Mars? I think it's like an 8-month trip just to get there. Would you be up for it?
Yeah, it's a really, really long trip, and there are a lot of unknowns right now. So if you asked me if I would go tomorrow, I would probably say no. I have a husband and a young son at home, and I definitely at this point in my life would not be up for that length of a trip.
All righty. Thank you so much, Karen and Chris. I'm just staring at the photo here of you guys floating in space. It's so awesome. Good luck. We can't wait to get you back here on Earth, and you can get some brownies and run outside.
Thanks a lot for joining us.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the Washington Post portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from the Portland Press Herald.
Station, this is the Portland Press Herald. How do you hear me?
Hello in Portland. It's great to hear you. Welcome to the space station.
Thank you. How are things looking from space today?
Well, actually, we're right over Texas at this moment, so it's kind of nice to look down and see a familiar part of the planet as we fly over it.
Great. Chris, the first question I have is for you about your recent spacewalk with Luca Parmitano that was cut short when he had water in his helmet. Can you tell me a bit about what you were doing on the spacewalk that day and how you had to react once the problem was discovered?
Sure, absolutely. The spacewalks are typically about 6.5 hours long, and we happened to be very early on in our spacewalk. It was about an hour or so into it when he first noticed some signs of water in his helmet. I happen to have his helmet right here, and the back part of it, if you can see it in the camera, has a white plastic thing, and that diverts the airflow around the back of your neck and over his face. And that's where once the water started to creep around the back of his neck is when he realized it was getting more and more and more. And through a series of questions, we realized it really wasn't sweat or any other bodily fluid, and there's a drink bag that we wear on our stomach, and it wasn't leaking from there as well. So we knew the problem was something that we needed to deal with right away. Fortunately, we were fairly close to the U.S. airlock where we go into and out of the space station. The only catch was we have these safety tethers, which are kind of like dog leashes, and mine was going around one direction of the space station and his was the other. So we had to separate for a little while. And once we got back to the airlock and I saw him again, it was I realized how quickly we needed to get the hatch open. And fortunately, Karen and our Russian colleagues were right there to repressurize the airlock and get us back in. But we were, it was a important situation, but it was very timely how everything happened to get lined up to get back inside.
Great. And Chris, you grew up right here on the southern coast of Maine in York. How do you stay connected to your hometown? I heard you recently participated in York's 4 on the 4th race, but from space.
Yeah, every year on the 4th of July in my hometown, they have that race, and I've been when I was home, I ran it often. I've been gone for a while now in the military, but that was one way. I was really excited to participate and include the town in my mission and include the state of Maine in our mission as well. I have friends there, and my mom still lives in the same house that I grew up in there in York. So when I go back and visit, it's fun to see family and friends. And I'll be there. I land in September, and I think sometime in early November I'll be back in Maine going to a few places.
Oh, that sounds great. Karen, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about the research you're doing while you're up there on the space station.
Yeah, we have a lot of research going on. There's probably about 150 various experiments that are going on throughout our increment. A lot of the research are things that are happening behind some of the panels that you see here, where our interaction with them will be to open them up, put in new experiments, do maintenance on the racks, and then once we close them, it's all up to the ground to control them remotely. There's everything from combustion to fluid physics to material science. And then there's other experiments where we have a little more hands-on with them, and we will actually work directly with the principal investigators on the ground, talking to them while we're doing it, and we can observe things, and they will ask us questions, and we kind of control the experiment. And there are also a lot of experiments that we're doing on ourselves, and that's one of the important things that we're doing. We're studying what happens to our bodies when we're living in a microgravity environment for the future when we travel further away from the Earth or spend more time in a microgravity environment.
And Karen, I also wanted to ask you about your use of social media while you're up there on the space station. I've seen your Twitter feed and Facebook and Pinterest posts. So how are you using that social media to stay connected with people back here on Earth?
Well, the main thing that I decided to try and do was one of my goals is to connect people who wouldn't necessarily be thinking about the space program, and I thought Pinterest would be a good way to do that. And another thing I wanted to do was to show, especially looking at the Earth, the way we see it. And so I've been trying really hard to capture photographs that look the way it does when we look out the window. And then I also like to add, try and make them as artistic as possible too. I like art and I like crafts and drawing and painting. And so when I get a picture and I look through them, I try to pick the ones that I think are the most aesthetically pleasing, and I will rotate them and crop them so that they look really nice.
And I know you both have children and spouses back here at home. Can you talk a little bit about how you stay in touch with them?
Sure. We have once a week, the ground sets up a video conference with us, usually on the weekends, where we have, like a FaceTime or Skype type of a conference with our family. It's not those programs, but it's a similar thing. And, of course, we have email that we can exchange, and recently we had an upgrade to our email, so it sends and receives more often than it used to just be a couple times a day before. Now it's more frequent. And those are the main. Oh, and we can also have an application on our computer that we can dial phone numbers and talk on the phone depending on where we are in the orbit for satellite coverage and those sort of things.
Many of us down here have seen YouTube videos of Karen washing her hair in space, or you, Chris, of shaving your head while you're up there. Why do you think people are so fascinated by these seemingly mundane tasks?
Well, I think that that's a good question, and both of us are kind of laughing because we don't really know exactly how to answer. But I think that people can very much relate to things that we all have in common with each other, and that's getting dressed, brushing your teeth, dealing with your hair or the absence of hair, and putting clothes on, and eating, all the things that every single one of us do every single day, and we're just doing those same things in a different location. So it's probably fun. That's why it's probably fun for folks to relate.
Great. And what do you miss what do you miss about being back here on Earth while you're up there?
For me, the main thing is my family. I have a husband and a small son, so I miss them a lot. And I miss being at home. Sometimes I can be kind of a homebody. I just like to be at home with my family and have my Saturday morning coffee with my husband, and of course, all the things that a person does with their children. And also running outside. I love to run, and a treadmill just isn't quite the same. We have a treadmill here that we run on, but I really, really miss running outdoors.
And Chris, what about you? Are there food items that you miss while you're up there?
Well, I do like to eat a lot, so that is one thing that very often comes into my mind. And we had just a minute ago, I was telling somebody else that a colleague of ours sent us an email just a few half hour ago of some homemade baked goods, and those looked really yummy to me. So that's one thing that I miss. And being outside, the smells of being outside, and just particularly in the summer when there's fresh mowed grass and that sort of thing, and being on the coast of Maine there and smelling that unique smell of the ocean and the rocky coast, that's the sort of thing that you can't replace up here. And those are the things that I'm looking forward to when I get back.
Okay. And any surprising facts about being up there on the space station that you think people here might be interested to hear about?
Your fingernails grow at the same rate, and we go around the Earth every 90 minutes, so we have sunlight for 45 minutes and dark for 45 minutes, and it really doesn't affect us because we turn the lights on when it's time to wake up, and we turn them off when we all say goodnight. And if we're interested in going to the window, we just look, and it happens to be day or night. So those cycles have no impact on our circadian rhythms at all. It's more of our daily work, and when we associate eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner with waking up and going to bed.
Great. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today, and I hope the rest of your trip is a safe one, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Maine.
Thanks so much, and I look forward to getting back to Maine. Take care.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Washington Post and Portland Press Herald. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.